Okay, next question. Okay, dear Dr. K, my name is Amelia, and I'm a 23-year-old introvert who has never had a boyfriend, girlfriend, and probably never will at this rate. I feel so stuck in this constant loop of feeling like I'll never find love or even experience it. I look around me at my friends or even siblings, and they have never suffered from this problem. Is there something wrong with me? Is there something I didn't learn or miss out on? Why am I so out of the loop? Everyone around me is either in a relationship, they have kids, they are married. Almost everyone has at least experienced love once before in their lives. I feel like such a loser. It's so embarrassing to even think about. I've never even kissed anyone, and let alone anything further than that. It hurts when you realize you've been missing out on these things in your life. Things that everyone experiences. I want something real. I just want that feeling of being happy with someone, but also knowing that I make someone else happy. What is pulling me back so much? I feel like I just sabotage myself anytime I get any hopeful opportunity. Ah, see, good. Our community is evolving, chat. Like they're starting to be reflective. So this is what I want to say. Like I just want to pause for a second. So this first half we've heard a lot, right? We hear this a lot. It's awesome that this person gives us the second paragraph. We haven't even read it yet. But like, do you guys see how this person is setting up the question and then they're already exploring a hypothesis? So this is awesome. I actually feel really hopeful for Amelia at this point. I know it sounds weird, but just the fact that like, you're starting to, it's okay to have problems in life. It's okay to ask questions in life. And then taking that next step to start to figure out, like, let me at least think about this. Like, what have I observed? What have I noticed? That's ultimately the strategy that I think leads to success. So let's see what they have to say. I feel like I just sabotage myself anytime I get any hopeful opportunity. I've been asked out on dates, but I've never actually been or gone to one. Okay. I get so scared and anxious that something will happen to me, and I end up making an excuse or canceling. I feel guilty if I even think about accepting the date. I feel guilty that I would be wasting this person's time if I did accept and ended up not seeing them again. I'm extremely scared of even the thought of getting into a relationship with someone or even trying to. I feel like since I've gone this long without finding someone, if I did get into a relationship with someone, then it would have to be perfect, but I never even give it a chance or even try. I have this impending doom that I will be taken advantage of and be used. I just don't understand what makes me do this or feel this way. I yearn for a real relationship so much and wonder how it feels to experience, but my head automatically tells me otherwise, that it will never happen, and if it did happen, that it would go wrong. I tell myself that I'm happy being alone and single, but deep down I know I'm not. I just need help and guidance on how to love and trust again. Damn, this is a good question, chat. Okay. So let's start. So this is interesting, right? So like, let's look at the language first. So I want you guys to notice the extremities of this person's thinking. So never had a boyfriend. Probably never. Constant. Never. Never. Everyone. Almost everyone. Never. Sabotage myself anytime. I've never. Okay. Have to be perfect. Never even give it a chance. Impending doom sort of qualifies, I think. Automatically. Never. So this is interesting, right? Because they say, I just need help and guidance on how to love and trust again. Now I could be making a mountain out of a molehill here, right? So like when I see all these nevers, I would imagine that the last sentence should say, I just need help and guidance on learning how to love and trust. Right? So that's what you would expect. Like if someone has never done anything before, then you would expect them like that they don't, it's not that they lost something, it's that they never had it. But what I'm hearing here is that I just need help and guidance on how to love and trust again. And this sort of makes sense with me because I have a running hypothesis here that something happened to this person, right? So like all these thoughts and feelings that they have that, they clearly want this, and yet something in their mind is telling them that like they get really scared or anxious. They feel like they're not going to live up to the other person's time. They feel like if they did accept, they have to be perfect. They have to commit, that the first date is the person that they have to spend the rest of their life with. So then the question becomes like, where do these thoughts and beliefs and feelings come from? And my guess would be that there's something that happened potentially traumatic to this person, like early on, where, they got taught in some way, shape, or form that they're different, that they aren't worth it, that they're not good enough, that they have to be perfect. And the interesting thing here is like needing to be perfect is about not being yourself, right? Like, why does someone need to be perfect? If you guys feel like you need to be perfect, if you really tunnel down into that, what you see is that needing to be perfect can only be true if what you are is not worth much. Right? So what this really comes down to is, where did this person learn that they're not worth much? Like, where did this person lose their self-esteem and lose their confidence in themselves so that they can't afford to be themselves, right? Do you guys get that? Like, that what this person is saying is that I can't afford to be me. I can't be myself. It has to be like this way that I see everywhere around me. People are in all these perfect relationships, and I'm not, because there's something fundamentally wrong with me. And we can kind of see it here because, like, they've never suffered from this problem. Like, so first of all, I don't think that's true. Is there something wrong with me? Like, that's what this person feels, right? This is a question that is born out of an emotion. Is there something I didn't learn or miss out on? Why am I so out of the loop? So like that's the question you've got to answer, right? So the way I'd approach this, if you guys feel stuck with something like this in life, and this is what we do with people, by the way. So I think like this actually is a great person for group coaching. This is a great group coaching candidate. So concretely, what I'd say, Amelia, is that you should think about signing up for group coaching. Because here's why. So like the problem is that this person thinks that they're alone, right? Like that I'm the only one who's ever experienced this. Like this is only me. And so what happens is they show up and they say like, since this is a problem that no one else suffers from, I want to do personal coaching. And I think one of the personal coaching is great, don't get me wrong. But I think one of the most valuable lessons this person can learn is when they show up in a group and they say this, everyone else is like, oh shit, this is exactly like me. And then you have 10 people who all feel this way, that there's something fundamentally busted with them, that the rest of the world is normal, and that like I'm messed up in some way, or I like missed that day of class where you learn how to have a relationship. And then there's a value to that. Like, sure, you can work with a personal coach about the origin of your feelings and stuff, but there's a value to realizing like, oh shit, this is actually like, there are other people who work through this. And then something really cool starts to happen, because then you guys can work on it together, right? And then you guys can kind of explore with each other. And Amelia hasn't figured this picture out, but she's figured out pieces. Do you guys get this? Like, here's the questions. Here's a hypothesis. And then when you get 8 people who form 8 hypotheses and you guys kind of work them together, then you get like an answer floats to the surface. And so my first thought, Amelia, is like, you should sign up for group coaching and bring this to your group and see what they have to say about it. Second thing is, I'll tell you like what I would do if I was running this group, is I'd ask you like, when did you start like Did you always feel like you were different? Did you always feel like you were out of the loop? Or did your feeling of being out of the loop start at a particular point? And the really tricky thing here is that when I ask when did it start, a lot of people assume that it has to be like a large traumatic event. Like they just assume that like, oh no, nothing like super traumatic. No, that's not how it works. It's usually a very, very small and seemingly insignificant thing. But when you're young, when you're like 5 or 6, and like something happens to you, like you start this, like the seed is planted in your mind that you're different. And then what happens is that seed gets watered by like small experience after small experience after small experience. And then it even gets further watered when you look around and as a cognitive bias starts to form in your mind, and then you look around and you start making these statements like they have never suffered from this problem. That's not true, right? Like it's just not true, but that's what your mind tells you. And then what happens is you start to have a lens through which you look at the world. And the more that you look at the world through this lens, the more it reinforces your core belief about yourself. And then you're giving it a lot of water. And then it's growing and it's growing and it's growing and it's big. And it feels huge. It feels like this insurmountable problem. And then so what you have to do is you really have to go back and try to figure out, like, where did you start to feel this way about yourself? Right? When did you start to learn that you are different? And that other people, learned something that you didn't learn, that you're broken in some way, that some part of your brain just isn't working. And so I think the more that you kind of explore that, you'll begin to realize that like that feeling is like a holdover or an echo from a past experience. It's not necessarily true today, but what's happening is like each of these experiences forms a little bit of an echo in your mind. And then after 1,000 of these experiences, you've got this cacophony that feels really overwhelming in your mind and dominates your thinking. But the funny thing is that all of the energy for those echoes, if you stop feeding it, it'll actually all die out. Right? In order to have that sustained echo, you have to create new sounds. And so this is where you've got to kind of explore where that comes from. And the second thing is that, I would really consider exploring your feelings when you do get asked out. Because like this is important. I get so scared and anxious that something will happen to me. And I end up making an excuse canceling. So when we approach problems, like my approach to problems, Healthy Gamer approach to problems, one is to find the root and one is to work in the present. So recognize that like you can ignore the root of this if you can learn a little bit more about how to not let your feelings control your behaviors. And so it doesn't matter what you think or you believe or you feel. The basic problem here, it sort of doesn't matter whether you feel like you're overweight so you're anorexic and you don't eat food, or you feel like you're overweight and so you refuse to socialize with other people. I had anxious thoughts about my growth today, and I was like, should I shave? And I was like, whatever. Right? So we all have thoughts and feelings that prompt us to things. I thought about canceling stream because I can't shave right now. I was afraid of how I would look. And so you can have these feelings that can cause you to want certain behaviors. And then understanding in that moment, how do you, like, what is this feeling that, like, is so strong that you want to make up an excuse or cancel? And then in my experience, what happens is as you tunnel down into your emotion in the present, the more carefully you look at it, the more you realize that it's not based on a solid foundation. That it's sort of like this feeling in and of itself. It's like a self-contained entity, and it's not really based on like something real. Which I know feels really strange, because the feeling itself is real, but the more that you look into it, the more that you tunnel down into it, the more you're going to realize that the emotion is like an entity of its own that's pushing you to do something, but it's actually not like reality. It's just your emotion. Right? That's what happens when emotions make you feel like things are real, even though they're not. And a good example of this for people who are severely depressed, they have this feeling that they're worthless and that their like children would be better off if they weren't alive, which is a crazy thought and is absolutely untrue. But in that moment, that person feels like that thought is absolutely true. And you have to dig into that thought. You have to dig into that feeling until you begin to realize, actually, hold on a second. Of course my kids love me. Of course they would be better off if I was here. But you're not going to realize that until you dig into that feeling in the moment. And so I'd say is try to find the root. And the second thing is, try to figure out like what's going on in these moments where you pull back. And as best as you can, try to let yourself not pull back and choose the kind of path that feels painful to you in that moment, right? Like even if because there are a lot of thoughts and feelings here, which I think are really like cognitive distortions. Like if I did get into a relation with someone, then it would have to be perfect. No, it doesn't. There's no such thing. Like, and some of this stuff is, some of these fears are born of lack of experience. It's sort of like, if you've never been if you've never been in a swimming pool, you may be afraid that you're going to drown the second your foot goes into the water. And it's sort of a reasonable thought, even though it's like not true, but like you just haven't done it yet, so you're not really sure. And so acknowledge for a moment that like you actually are inexperienced, so a lot of your conclusions are likely to be wrong. And just kind of work through that stuff. But I think there's really two angles here. One is to, really try to figure out where you got these thoughts or feelings. And the second is, fine, they're here now. How can you start to work on not letting them control you? And very practically, I'd say that meditation is a very good tool to start to explore yourself. I think if you want to see a therapist, I'd highly recommend cognitive behavioral therapy. In this case, like try that out if you haven't tried it already, because cognitive behavioral therapy helps you understand the relationship between your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors. Third thing that you can do is sign up for group coaching, because I think you'll be surprised to learn that you're not that alone. And that other people will help you work through this. And I think the other really important thing that I like a lot about group is that there's a lot of value, which I think we underestimate, to being able to help someone else. And so, what Amelia really needs more than anything else is to have someone else in group who feels similarly to what she does. And Amelia needs to help this person, right? Help this person find confidence. And that in and of itself is going to give her the most confidence. Okay. Here's the question. I'll read it again. Dear Dr. K, my name is Amelia. I'm a 23-year-old introvert who has never had a boyfriend or girlfriend and probably never will at this rate. I feel so stuck in this constant loop of feeling like I'll never find love or even experience it. If I look around me at my friends or even siblings, and they have never suffered from this problem, is there something wrong with me? Is there something I didn't learn or missed out on? Why am I so out of the loop? Everyone around me is either in a relationship, they have kids, they are married, and almost everyone has at least experienced love once before in their lives. I feel like such a loser. It's so embarrassing to even think about. I've never even kissed anyone, and let alone anything further than that. It hurts when you realize you've been missing out on these things in your life, things that everyone experiences. I want something real. I just want that feeling of being happy with someone, but also knowing that I make someone else happy. What is pulling me back so much? I feel like I just sabotage myself anytime I get any hopeful opportunity. I've been asked on dates, but I've never actually been or gone to one. I get so scared that something will happen to me, and I end up making an excuse or canceling. I feel guilty if I even think about accepting the date. I feel guilty that I would be wasting this person's time if I did accept and ended up not seeing them again. I'm extremely scared of even the thought of getting into a relationship with someone, or even trying to. I feel like since I've gone this long without finding someone, if I did get into a relationship with someone, then it would have to be perfect, but I never even give it a chance or even try. I have this impending doom that I will be taken advantage of and be used. I just don't understand what makes me do or feel this way. I yearn for a real relationship so much and wonder how it feels to experience this, but my head automatically tells me otherwise, that it will never happen. And if I if it did happen, that it would go wrong. I tell myself that I'm happy being alone and single, but deep down I know I'm not. I just need help and guidance on how to love and trust again. Okay, two other thoughts. Two other things I picked out of this, okay? One is, but my head automatically tells me otherwise. So this is important. Because what I want Amelia to understand is that this is not actually you, right? So do you guys see how sometimes she uses the first person, and sometimes she uses the third person to talk about her head? And that's what I mean, that this emotion is like a separate thing. It's not actually the real you. It's like some samskar. It's a samskar, or like some automatic programming, some malware in your cognition that tells you otherwise. It's just like some fucking malware that's like sending you pop-ups. It's not actually you. And so that understanding, and the more that you begin to realize that, the more freedom you're going to gain from it. Okay? The second thing is, I want you guys to notice how future-focused Amelia is. Like, she's paralyzed in the present because so much of the future is determined by the now. If she goes out with someone, it would be a waste of time if she ended up not seeing them again. If she goes out with someone, she has to be perfect for the rest of her life. Right? It's like the weight of a perfect future is being weighed in her mind against the present. And so how is she expected to act? Right? So I want you guys to be really careful when you do this. This is a really important point. Don't weigh the future against the present. Don't do it. Because when you weigh the entirety of a future against the present moment, the future is always going to win. So like we had a question or something, someone was talking about, being 27 and wanting to finish college. And they were like thinking about like how embarrassing it would, like in the moment when they're trying to think about, okay, should I re-enroll in college? I'm 27 years old. And in that moment, what they're doing is they're weighing all of the future of that, right? Like if I go to college, I'm going to be older than everyone. I may be the same age as like my teaching assistants. And they're like all of these future things that they're thinking about. I'm going to be like a 29-year-old college graduate. It's going to be so embarrassing. And they pile on all of these future possibilities. Pile and pile and pile and pile. And then like that gets weighed against the present, which is like, do I just ignore my problems for a moment, for one more day, and do I just queue up for whatever I'm playing? So anytime you weigh the future against the present, the weight of all of the future against the present, you're going to lose. You won't, it's absolutely paralyzing. And so start by acknowledging that like what you're doing today is just going on a date. That's all it is. Is there going to be another date? Who knows? Do you have to be perfect? Who knows? All you're doing is you're meeting with someone. That's all you're doing, because that's literally all you're doing. And to really let go of the expectation of everything in your mind about what needs to happen in the future or what is going to happen in the future, because you have no idea. You can't predict the future. Are you psychic, Amelia? But that's what your mind tells you. Your mind tells you, oh my goodness, I know exactly what's going to happen. If you say yes to this person, they're going to take advantage of you. And you won't like them. And you'll be stuck in a relationship, right? So there's another samskar here. You guys are paying attention about her being stuck. She's afraid of being stuck. You guys see that? Why can't she get into a relationship? Because she's afraid of being trapped. It may not be like low self-esteem. So one option is low self-esteem. The other route here is that she may have gotten stuck with something, with someone, a relationship that she didn't want. Not sure. Watch out about the future, chat. Okay.